IVM.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we share the journey of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners.
Hi guys, I'm your host Saif, and our guest traveler today is Vibha Ravi from the blog PixelVoyages.com. Vibha is a Mumbai-based independent writer who's also had previous stints with Thomas Cook India and as a journalist with the news agency AFX Asia and the newspaper Business Standard. Without much ado, let's get started with today's episode and find out where Vibha is taking us to.
Hi Vibha, welcome to the Musafir Stories.
Thank you, Seth and Faiza. So a big hello to also those listening to this podcast.
Thank you, and it's a real pleasure to have you, Vibha.
Vibha, why don't you go ahead and tell our listeners a little about yourself and also when did you start traveling?
Sure. So my name is Vibha Ravi and I write for a living. So apart from writing for my blog, I also take up content assignments. I have been a journalist and a travel professional, so that has kind of prepared me for my current avatar, so to speak. I was born in Chennai and I've so far lived in 5 cities. As for this love for travel, I would say that I've definitely inherited from my mother's side of the family. In fact, I keep telling my mom, that she has wheels on her feet because she just can't stay at one place for a long time. And genetics aside, I think my fascination for travel began with train journeys because every vacation, my son and I used to travel between my grandparents' house in Chennai and my hometown, which was Kanpur.
Okay.
So, those journeys, they will kind of have lingered in my memory ever since. So I still remember, the Tamil Nadu Express chugging up a mountain, completely random kids, waving at us. And, and we were waving back excitedly in the same manner. And the pitch black tunnels, that were like so mysterious and scary at the same time. So I guess children enjoy things more because their senses are just so alive. Everything seems interesting.
Absolutely,
From the calls of the vendors, like, in the north, you have chaya, chaya. And in the south, kapi, kapi. So it's such an interesting blend of, sights and sounds and everything that comes together in a train.
I absolutely love the way you're explaining. It actually feels I've gone years back and I'm sitting in a train and I can imagine all that.
Thank you for refreshing our memories. So getting back to our topic of discussion today, what we usually with the Musafir Stories is each week when we have a guest traveler on the show, we request them to take us and our listeners to an Indian destination and share the complete experience of trip they had to that destination, right from, say, how they got there to what they did, what they ate, the culture there, the kind of people they met, everything literally from A to Z about that place. So having that in mind, where are you taking our listeners today?
Sure. So join me, both of you, Seth and Faiza, and also the listeners, on a journey to Shekhawati. Now, Shekhawati is in Rajasthan. And you might or might not have been to the other well-known places in Rajasthan like Jaipur and Jodhpur. But if you want to get a feel of the real rustic India and also, to get in touch with the quirky side of things, because Shekhawati is a place that is very different from the rest of what I have seen in Rajasthan so far. So the reason why Shekhawati is unique is that it has painted havelis. Now, there are places like Bikaner which also have some bits of painted havelis, as also Jaipur. But Shekhawati region is it's like a huge canvas of, everywhere you look around you. Except for the new buildings, of course. The older ones, you'll see them painted. And it's so vibrant and so different from what, we've seen used to flats in Mumbai and flats in Delhi and Bangalore. That, you have a monotone, you have the same kind of glass and fiber and similar buildings, to see those, painted Havelis that are, each one is different, and each one is not only constructed differently, it's also painted differently. So that was, kind of the attraction, that, the kind of pull that led us to Shekhawati. So,
awesome. And also, I think these have been painted, close to 100 years back.
That's right.
Right.
So,
they look beautiful.
Yeah, so someone who's wondering what these are, before, obviously, we'll get into the details during the course of the podcast, but please do go and check out Vibha's blog as well. It's PixelVoyages.com, which has some beautiful pictures of these Havelis that...
Colorful.
Yeah, very colorful, and as Vibha mentioned, it's completely different from the Jaipur, Udaipur type of Rajasthan that one would have seen, and which is more mainstream and more commercialized, I would think, right? These are not as popularly seen in, say, the Rajasthan tourism ads or the pictures that are seen online.
That's right. So basically, if you search for Havelis also, if you do a search for Havelis, maybe one or two of Shekhawati Havelis will come up, but mostly what you see is those in Jaisalmer. So, what I wanted to also point out here was, when we were there, we found that there were a lot of foreign tourists. So I found that, many times we ourselves fail to appreciate the beauty and the heritage that we have. Maybe because, it is, see, one thing about Shekhawati is that it's, though it's a little, it's pretty close actually to Jaipur, but once you do have to take a vehicle and move around the places. So, because it's not very well connected by train and other public transport. So, maybe that is one of the factors that, it's not very popular among the Indian crowd. But I would say that definitely one should visit these places if you're fond of history, if you're fond of architecture, if you're fond of even paintings, for that matter.
Sure. And then, Vibha, just quickly give us a background into these Havelis. These are something very different from the usual forts and everything that one would see in Jaipur or Udaipur, the huge forts that these Maharajas and Rajputs basically had, right? So how are these Havelis different to those? And what an attraction, the paintings, the murals that one sees? Please speak a little bit about that as well.
Sure. Okay, so these Havelis are different because the palaces and castles and forts that you see were mainly constructed by the kings, by the Maharajas, right? By the Maharaja of Jaipur, Udaipur, etc. But Shekhawati as a region, most of the Havelis belong to the traders, the trading community. And they were called Marwadis. Most of us would know the trading community from Rajasthan as Marwadis because they were hailed from the region called Marwad. The current Havelis, they belong to business families who since have moved to places like Calcutta, Mumbai, Chennai. And there's a long history to it. Actually, initially, they were based in Jaipur. But as the taxes began increasing, they felt a little oppressed. They asked for a reduction in tax. That didn't happen. So they said, okay, we will move our business elsewhere because you are not cooperating with us. So they moved to these other towns of Junjunu, Sikar, Churu. And this is, these merchants or these traders used to trade in cotton, opium, spices. And because, India was known for all these different things I'm talking about, they soon became very wealthy and influential. So, and they didn't want to kind of build Havelis, or rather build palaces that would be kind of competing with the kings. So they built these different kind of opulent painted Havelis, which reflected their stature. Because if you go and see, they are like double Havelis, which are huge. Like they build these Havelis as a means of expressing or showing their wealth to the rest of the people. And also they used to have business meetings there. So to kind of leave a good impression on the people they were welcoming to their homes. So they're built in a rather opulent manner, and they were painted in such a manner to also to also convey to the people around them. The traders had been everywhere. They came to Bombay, they came to Chennai, etc. as I was saying. But the common people don't know what's going on in these cities. right?
Yeah.
And they have seen the latest scientific inventions, for that matter, aeroplanes or which the Janta at that time hadn't, seen or even imagined.
Yeah.
So when they went back, so it's actually quite interesting because if you see, there'll be, traditional motifs, like there'll be a Ganesha with goddesses on either side, or there'll be a Krishna dancing. And right next to it, you'll find there'll be a British soldier standing there. In his gear, holding a rifle and all that. And right next to that, you'll find an aeroplane suddenly out of nowhere fly sky. And, so this juxtaposition is very interesting because it kind of, what I felt was that it kind of reflects the changes that actually India went through, beginning with the time that the Rajasthani rulers ruled those places to then the Britishers who moved in. Then as they moved out, the kind of changes that India was going through at that time, a lot of scientific inventions and progress, and the kind of change in culture from people wearing saris and stuff to, seeing the Britishers wearing dresses, and which exposed them to a completely different kind of set of cultural nuances that we had not been exposed to yet. So it's a very interesting, it's like a kaleidoscope, I would say.
Absolutely.
You keep turning and you see the various changes that were happening in India at that time.
Awesome. So thank you for that nice little background and context for all our listeners. So now that we have good background about this, getting on with the journey, what time of the year did you travel there, Vibha, and is that a good time to go there?
I actually went in November.
Okay.
And so how it happened was that, for a few years now, my husband, daughter and I, we visit a new place every Diwali vacation. So because that's one of the longest holidays that she gets. So and Diwali generally falls in October, November.
Yeah.
And that's winter in most of India.
Mm-hmm.
So it also happens to be an ideal time for domestic tourists actually to visit Rajasthan, because December and January are when the foreign tourists start coming and hotel rates go up like crazy.
Sure.
So we made a 10-day itinerary around Shekhawati.
Okay.
And the best time, if you ask me, is from November to February, because that's the time when the climate is the best. Because otherwise Rajasthan gets very hot.
Yeah.
April, May and July, June towards the rains. So that's the best time to visit.
I have one question, Vibha.
Sure.
So how did you guys travel? And where did you guys travel?
Okay, so we traveled from Bombay.
Okay.
And the nearest airport for Shekhawati is at Jaipur.
Okay.
So once you reach Jaipur, you need to hire a vehicle and drive down to Shekhawati. Now, since it's, as I said, Shekhawati is a region,
Right.
so it has different cities and different towns with very interesting names, like Churu and Fatehpur and Ramgarh and Navalgarh. Okay. So what we did was we decided to stay in Mandava, because Mandava has the most hotel options.
All right.
You have
And
a variety
how
of...
far is it from Jaipur?
It's around 3.5 hours, 3 to 3.5 hours.
Okay.
Day-wise, if you look at it, as I said, we had a 10-day itinerary, and but we did Shekhawati for 4 days. Okay, and then from Shekhawati, because you have to come back to Jaipur to fly out. From Shekhawati, we also went to Alwar and Bharatpur. Then we came back to Jaipur for the return flight. So in Shekhawati, we first landed in Jaipur down to Mandava, and then stayed in a place called Radhika Haveli.
Okay.
So as I said, since we traveled during Diwali, the day we reached Mandava, it was Diwali.
Oh.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Okay. So you got to spend Diwali there.
Absolutely. So how in Bombay and many other places, actually you don't get to see the sky at all. So it was like, Diwali in the sky with the stars, and Diwali also on the streets, because they still use those diyas, those... of course, there are those wax candles and all, but in Bombay, I don't know if you know of those clay diyas that we...
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Nowadays, you see a lot of electric lighting and all the kind.
Correct.
Yeah,
and even those small tiny LED diyas have come out. I see a lot of people using them as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this place, we saw a lot of those old diyas. So it was like, kind of being in an movie or something, because everything around is so fascinating.
Amazing. Yeah, it just takes you back years, or rather it feels like you are in a movie set altogether.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Did it remind you of Sanjay Leela Bhansali?
Yeah, I was thinking of this movie.
Yeah, it did. Because, as I said, it had that old feel to it, except that, of course, we were not dressed in those gorgeous, heavy saris and stuff. But and we had some, they had quite a few friends also who joined in and who were seeing this for the first time. So, you then see how unique India is, for the many festivals that we have and the way we celebrate them. So, traveling also opens up your mind to how others perceive India and how fascinating they find it.
Absolutely. That's
awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess it's enough for you guys to settle into Mandava and the Shekhawati region as well, right? By celebrating Diwali and settling down into your whole vacation.
Absolutely. So that was a fantastic cracker of a start, so to say. So then the next day we went to Junjunu and Navalgarh.
Okay.
We did the Sati temple, which in Junjunu, which is quite an interesting, has an interesting structure. If you look from outside, it's kind of built like one of those cakes, if you've ever seen one of those tiered cakes with pillars and that kind of stuff.
Like the wedding kind?
Yeah, that's right. So it looked a bit like that from the outside, and inside it's about a lady who gave up her life and, sati. So, that itself is a clue.
Mm-hmm.
But inside there are quite a few smaller shrines dedicated to all things, all the sun signs, or like you have Rahu, Ketu in our horoscopes, right?
Okay.
So each one had a small shrine or a small temple dedicated, like from Surya to Rahu, Ketu, Mangal. So we found that very interesting because, never in my life have I seen a temple dedicated to all these.
Right.
You would normally see Ram and Sita and whatever, Krishna and stuff like that. So that I found very interesting, but it might not, because is a little far off, it might not be everybody's cup of tea. So we did that, and then, as I said, because we were short in time and we wanted to cover more things, so we did that in Junjunu. From Junjunu, then we went to Navalgarh, and there's this really tiny little place called DS Bungalow in Navalgarh.
Okay.
So since, it was quite, we were at the temple for quite some time, and by the time we reached, now it's time for lunch. So we went to this place called DS Bungalow for lunch. And why I'm talking about DS Bungalow is this, it is a small little place, but the food was amazing, and very economical. Because we also ate at Castle Mandava, that kind of, I won't say blew a hole in our pockets, but it was, the food was at DS Bungalow was like one of the best I've had in Rajasthan.
Oh my God, okay.
So you enter and there's a gate over there and you cross over and there are fields and in completely open area of space of like kind of a forest and a field, mixed between a forest and a field. And there's so many birds from like peacocks to parrots to maynas to cuckoos and all kinds of birds, So I ditched my friends and I went and sat there.
You made new friends.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I went and sat there with my camera for quite a while, lots of pictures of the birds. So that was, one of the most interesting things for me that day. And so after that, then we moved on to Navalgarh, Ramnath Podar Haveli Museum.
Okay.
Yeah, this museum is actually very interesting because it has quite a few of the Rajasthan, it explains quite a few of the intricacies of Rajasthani culture. One would imagine that, for us, a pagadi is a pagadi, right?
Sure.
It's just a headgear. But if you go there, there's an entire display of several pagadis and how they have been tied, which denotes not just, it can be used to denote the caste of a person, the social hierarchy, and his profession.
Oh my God.
So,
okay, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
That's a new insight. I did not know that there's so many angles to a pagadi.
Exactly. So those kind of things, that we saw on this trip that made this trip completely like very different from what we had seen so far. Then there also, there's a display of the wedding gear of each caste. The boy will be wearing a certain dress, the girl will be wearing a certain dress. And if you're fond of dolls, you'll see a lot of these dresses on dolls. So they've taken a lot of effort to kind of display their culture and the history and where we came from. So which was very interesting.
Awesome. And then tell us a little bit more about the Ramnath Podar Haveli that you said you saw in Navalgarh, Vibha. You did mention about different kind of dresses and pagdis and everything. But apart from that, was this also strikingly beautiful in terms of the murals and the paintings as well?
Yeah, that's right. So most of Shekhawati Havelis you'll see are generally of 2 levels, which means you have a ground level and you have the first level at least. And there might also be a level above that, which in this case was Ramnath Podar Haveli has 3 levels. From the outside, it's painted like most of the Havelis in Shekhawati. So you have those soldiers in Rajasthani attire guarding the entrance. They have on the top, all the doors, the entrances are very strikingly built of Shekhawati Havelis because, they were the first thing you saw and the first impression that a visitor had of the wealth or rather the status of the person who's living inside. They have a Ganpati or a Ganesh ji ki murti, on top, just above the door. And then there are goddesses on either side. And then after the traditional motifs are where, those quirky elements as I was talking about, then they come in. So you would so you have a lot of scenes from our epics, from the Ramayana or from the Mahabharata. And we did hire a guide in the Podar Haveli because he's the one who told us about all these, nuances of the pagdis and all. Though it's written there, there is a description there, but it's much more interesting if someone tells you about it.
That's so awesome. So, cool. So let's get on with day 3 then.
On day 3, we visited Fatehpur, and here we saw quite a few Havelis actually. Nadin and Saraf Haveli are next to each other.
Okay.
Then we went to Nevatia Haveli and Singhania Haveli. Okay. Nadin Haveli is actually owned by a French lady.
Oh, okay, wow.
Yeah. So she bought the Haveli. She saw the state that Haveli was in, and she's restored the Haveli quite beautifully. She's an artist herself, and she has her paintings on display. And they are resident artists who come from abroad, stay with her, train, and then go back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so some of them are also double up as guides, so when visitors come like we went, so one of our students who was explained to us how, the architecture or the layout of those Havelis. Once you enter, as I told you, the entrance is very grand, right? And you go in and it's like a passage. And on either side, there's a raised platform. So when you would come, there would be drummers seated on these platforms.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So they would play those drums like nagadas to announce a visitor's arrival.
Wow. That's fancy.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I told you, it was, it reminded absolutely your living history. You can imagine, if you have a good imagination, you can think of all that happening in the past and how, different way of life it used to be.
True.
Right? So once you get in, then you have to wait, okay? Because there are sections in the Haveli. Mardana is Mardana part is for the males. And then there's a Janana. So which means Janana is for females. Sure. So, and since, in India at that time and in Rajasthan actually till you have a lot of parda, right? So the women are not exposed to outsiders at all. So you're not supposed to look at them. Any outsider who came in did not have a direct view. Even after entering the first room, they would not have a direct view of the inside. Okay. There was kind of a jali, a wall with a lattice window in between. So the person would come there and announce who he or she was. And then the host of the house, or whoever the man of the house would come out. And then they would decide, where they were supposed to be let in. So if it was a guest, say a business visitor, then there was a separate room for them. They would be taken to that room and this would be conducted there, whatever talks they had needed to have. If it was somebody they knew, then they would allow him into the other part. And if it was somebody they were really comfortable with, then only would he or she be allowed into the Janana part. Then there, as I told you, there are different levels to the Haveli. So I was told that, the men and the women used to live apart. Like I said, there were these sections, right? And for the women, so they would live apart. But what struck me was, the older generation would live down at the ground floor level and the younger generation would live on top, because if you look at the stairs, steps are very steep. So the younger generation used to stay up and the older generation used to stay down. So it wasn't just gender, also age segregation for whatever convenience purposes.
Nice.
So which were the Havelis that you had a chance to visit in Fatehpur, Vibha?
Yeah, so the other ones I saw was Nevatia Haveli and Singhania Haveli. Now Singhania Haveli was pretty much locked, so we just saw part of it. Nevatia Haveli, actually we had a good experience because we met this gentleman who told us that, the Haveli is going to be up for sale soon. If I remember correctly. Yeah, somebody from Delhi has bought that Haveli. Yeah. But the sad part is that many Havelis, including this one, would be brought down. I mean, it would be demolished. And a new hotel would be created in its place.
Oh, that's sad. That's sad.
It's pretty sad. Yeah.
Sad. Day 3, this is right?
Yeah, that's right. After seeing all these Havelis, we were dead tired. But we still came back we had to come back, obviously, but we came back and we had lunch at Castle Mandava. Again, that was also quite, it's a huge, as I said, it's a fort and a castle. So we went around, looked at the place, had lunch. And then we went for a visit to Raghunath Temple, which is in Mandava, in the evening. So it was, I guess, the most busy day we had, in that entire itinerary of 10 days.
Awesome. And day 4 was, again, a lot of moving, or was it around Mandava itself?
Yeah, so day 4 we were dead tired, as I said. So we all woke up very late. And but since we had not seen Mandava, because we were doing this back and forth, so we hadn't got a chance to see much of Mandava. So we went around Mandava that day. Again, we took, we didn't take an official guide, but there was a fellow just right opposite our hotel who was running a shop. So we asked him and he said, thank you. So he did take us around.
That's nice of her.
Yeah. So we went and saw a Chokhani double Haveli. So as I said, double Haveli means it's like really huge. So there were 2 parts of it, 2 brothers living in the Haveli, and each built in a different, or rather painted in a different manner. It's again painted in all kinds of, battle scenes, and you have kings and princes painted over there. Then you have a goddess right next to it. And, then there's someone having a wine. There's like a European having wine, a lady with an umbrella. And as I said, trains are quite a common feature because it was so novel or whatever. So, a train with the guard at the last bogie waving a flag and stuff like that. So you have to, which is why it makes it so interesting. Why it's also important to spend quite a bit of time there, because otherwise you miss out these small little things that make it, that much more unique.
Yeah, I agree. Also, Vibha, I'd just like to ask, was there like an entry fee for most of these Havelis, or how was that?
Okay, so there was an entry fee at Nadeen Haveli because it's a private Haveli, and there is an entrance charge also because they guide you and tell you about the place. Singhania Haveli and Nevatia Haveli, there's no charge. Then Ramnath Podar Haveli Museum, because it is a museum, the proper, ticket that you get, and you pay a certain official price for it. Then all these other Havelis in Mandava, there was no charge. Except for one Haveli, which is called the Jhunjhunwala Haveli. There's a charge because there's a supposedly gold leaf painted ceiling over there. So if you look at the ceiling, there's a scene of, Krishna and Gopikas. That's a quite popular theme actually, if you look at throughout the Shekhawati Havelis, which is these जैसे वो होता था ना, Krishna and Gopikas used to be dancing in a garba kind of a, something like that. So, yeah. So, that if you look up at the ceiling, you can see certain parts. The paint has come off in some parts, but some parts you can see that golden sheen over there. So, they said is, gold leaf. Yeah, so in Mandava we saw also a slain Ram Ladia Haveli, which was again very different because it has lots of all these rulers of Rajasthan, different clans, their kings painted over there. But there we didn't find anybody to explain things to us, so we didn't know. Where you can see, this Raja and that Raja and this from this family of family or dynasty. But the paintings are interesting and they're in good condition.
Yeah, but in spite of the things that you might have missed out on due to the constraints of time, it does really sound like a really enriching and fulfilling trip you've had, right? Covering all these Havelis. And for me, the thing that stands out most is that these are still pretty untouched by commercialization and the crowds that you find at most places and most monuments that are there in India. It's a little special in that case that you're more close to it. It gives you that feeling that you could go there and enjoy that place and not be bogged down by the crowds.
Absolutely.
In hindsight, you said you might want to have changed the itinerary a little bit. How and why is that, Vibha?
Yeah, so as I said, because, I found that we were a little short of time in terms of seeing all that Shekhawati has to offer. In fact, there's a place called Dundlod, which is on the way to Navalgarh. Okay. So, that also has a very interesting fort. And if you have time, you could also go horse and see some horses. So that would have been, brought in a different element to our itinerary. Mm-hmm. Then also I would have stayed in Navalgarh. Okay. I would have preferred staying in Navalgarh because it's closer to the other places, and you would have more time to see places rather than going back and forth. Yeah, so my suggested itinerary, I think I would say you land in Jaipur and go to Mandava first. Okay. Right, have lunch at Castle Mandava because the lunch is also different. Plus, you get to see the castle, and then you come back to Navalgarh. Okay. So you stay in Navalgarh, then you visit Fatehpur the second day. Mm-hmm. And the third day you could go around Navalgarh itself, as I said. Fourth day you could again, if you want to see, actually Mandava is worth seeing. So I would say you should go to Mandava once again. And then you can leave for Jaipur. I mean, if you want a 4-day itinerary. But ideally I would say one should at least spend 6 to 8 days here. In fact, at DS Bungalow, person who owns this place, DS Bungalow, he told us that foreigners come and stay with him for like 2 months at a time. Oh. Yeah. So, this concept of slow travel and kind of immersive travel, that's what they believe in, right? That's they have the funds, of course. So, so you need to have the money, I guess, and the mindset to kind of be that interested in something to kind of explore it in every little detail as much as possible. So if you like to do that, I would say you should spend more time and see places in more detail. Awesome.
Thank you so much for calling that out, Vibha, so that any potential travelers or listeners seeking to go to the Shekhawati region, they can plan their itinerary accordingly. Right. So, Vibha, you've given us beautiful insight into this pretty unexplored part and facet of Rajasthan, I would say. But if I had to call out one moment from this trip, if you just had to close your eyes and think about this trip, what's that one moment that comes up?
That's a difficult one because there were too many. One is, of course, as I told you, that the birds at this place, DS Bungalow. Right. And second, I think we went for dinner to another hotel in Mandava. We had dinner on the terrace. It was like open to the sky, and there were little candles and lit over there on the table. And the view, it gave you a view of the city, for quite a distance. That was another, moment when I was reminded, because as I said, I come from Kanpur, and there, sleeping on the terrace was one of the things that we used to do as children. So it reminded me of that. Third, yes, meeting this person at Nevatia Haveli because basically not just this person, and also those moments where we met the caretakers, because you see the kind of life they live. It's kind of a life which is like, very different from the way we live, right? So it's completely devoid of any comfort and completely devoid of any kind of television or anything else for that matter.
It's quite heartbreaking, I feel, because when you look around, the Haveli is so beautiful. And in there, there's someone who's living there whose life is so different.
Very different, exactly. So it's kind of, it makes you reflect and thank God, for all that we have. We're so fortunate to have in our lives, that we don't even think about, right? So travel that way, as they say, really expands your horizons, not just in terms of the experiences, but also philosophically say that it makes you see much more than you would be comfortable with even seeing, that you might not want to see certain things, but you see them and you really are thankful and you feel blessed for that matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very well said.
On that profound note, Vibha, on behalf of the Musafir Stories, I'd like to thank you very, very much for showing us the beautiful colors of Rajasthan and being an excellent guide, taking us all around the Shekhawati region, showing us the colors and the murals and the paintings, and giving us an insight into the history of the place. Thank you so much, Vibha, and we look forward to hearing more such stories, hearing and reading more such stories from you. But for the reference of our listeners, what's a good way to keep in touch with your work?
Yeah, okay. So my blog, as you said, the URL is http://pixelvoyages.com. You can find most of my writing there. I do write for other portals as well. I write for Moneycontrol and on occasion I write for Lonely Planet magazine. But for me, you can also find me on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook under the handle PixelVoyages. And if you want to get in touch with me, just drop a mail to vibharavi1@gmail.com.
For the reference of our listeners, we will have all these links in the show notes section of the podcast.
Right. Thank you so much, Vibha. Very, very informative, and it just opened our minds. And it let us imagine so many things that you were describing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, F and Feza. It was really a pleasure talking to both of you.
That was yet another great episode of the Musafir Stories. If you guys like the show, please subscribe to us on iTunes, Audioboom, Stitcher, Pocket Radio, or any other podcasting app that's available on iOS or Android. You could also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We go by the handle The Musafir Stories. Or if it suits you, you could email us at themusafirstories@gmail.com and visit our website www.themusafirstories.com for more information. All of these links will be made available in the show notes section of the podcast. So here's to more traveling, sharing, and inspiring. Stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, happy travels and goodbye.